my name is Lutka, and I work as UX researcher here at Kentico. And before that, I was like a psychologist and behavior analyst. So I'm combining those two fields and bringing them to UX. So it's kind of fun thing to do. And yeah, the topic today is why do we say one thing and do another? So please raise your hand if you ever said that you're gonna do something and then you just didn't. Yeah, most of us. And I believe you have maybe some experience with your users that they, during some interview, they said something that they definitely gonna use your new feature, and then the adoption was very low. So yeah, we don't always act on what we say, and that is completely human thing to do. It's completely normal. And before the talk, we were talking, and I actually realized that sometimes even ChatGPT will tell you that it's going to do something. It's going to gaslight you. It did something, then it's going to do a completely different thing. Anyway, you can imagine this like a New Year's Eve, right? You're full of hope, full of excitement, full of alcohol, and you think like, okay, next morning I'm gonna start running and I'm gonna run every day. Like this kind of New Year's resolution. And New Year's resolution sometimes don't end up being really good, and we sometimes don't act on them. And that's the same principles as we sometimes experience with our users. So we invest a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of budget into solutions that sometimes don't meet the user's needs. And that's why it is important to understand what lies behind the behavior, or what lies behind somebody not doing the behavior they said they're going to do. So if we understand that, we can make our research interviews, or basically any research, more meaningful, and we can be aware of this kind of bias. So let's move on. So I do have this metaphor. This is another Lucy, right? Not related to me, right? The thing is that in the evening, I might have a plan that I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm gonna have some matcha or something, and then I'm gonna do yoga and I'm gonna be productive. And at 5:45, I'm gonna have most of my work done. Right? Sounds very ambitious. And I said that in the context of the evening, if the context of the hopeful Lucy that sees it as like, yeah, that's really doable. Depends on their schedule. Yeah. And the morning comes, and that's the Lucy in the morning in a bed with a cat. And it's not 5 a.m., it's like 7 a.m. And yeah, life happens. And that Lucy isn't really doing the yoga thing. And there is this gap between what we say we will do and what we really end up doing. So yeah, this is the same situation as with the New Year's resolution. And yeah, our hopes and dreams sometimes don't survive the real life. I do have example from our testing. It is a testing we did a while ago. And on this testing session, I noticed our user doing something kind of interesting. Basically, what you can see here is experience by Kentico. And this is a listing of like article pages. And there is like a article page, coffee processing. Our prototype is always all about coffee. And the user in this scenario, he was commenting on how useful this pencil icon is. Like, that's amazing, you have it in here. It is so easy to click on it. I don't have to go to the content tree and look through that and find the article I want to edit. This is so useful. Next scenario comes in, and he is instructed to go to coffee processing and edit something. He didn't use this pencil. He went to the tree and find the coffee processing here. This was like 2 minutes apart. And I'm not saying that because I want to say that the user was wrong or the scenario was wrong. I'm just saying that this is something that we may encounter, and sometimes we just don't realize it because people sometimes say, oh, this is so cool, I'm definitely going to use it. And then you observe the real behavior, and the real behavior doesn't match it. And there are some reasons why this is the way it is. I do have another example, and then we will go to the explanation of that and the nerdy part of it. So, yeah. Have you heard about this story, the story of Yellow Walkman? No, not all of you heard it. So basically, Sony was doing focus group, and they asked people if they would like the new yellow Walkman. They had like yellow, like the sporty one, the trendy one, and the black one, the boring one. And most of the people in the focus group said the yellow one is better. Like, I would definitely use it. I would definitely buy it. But the researchers were kind of clever in this scenario. And what they did was they are like, okay, thank you for all of your insights. And as a little thank you gift, we prepared for you the Walkman. Which color would you like? And most of the people who said, I would definitely buy the yellow one, they picked the black one. So that was this little trick how to check if the user's behavior matches their statements. So the thing is, and the thing that all of these scenarios have in common is that in the moment, we are guided by the context, by the emotions, by the reinforcement. Not always by our conscious plans. Have you ever heard about Kahneman's slow thinking, fast thinking? Yeah. So basically, he describes like two systems of thinking, two modes of thinking. We have the slow thinking, that is like the rational one, that is to prepare some stuff, have a time to think about something and plan. But then we have the fast thinking, and that's a system that really influences our behavior automatically. Right? So a lot of our behavior is done automatically in the moment, guided by the context we are in. Right? So this is the Lucie in the evening planning her morning routine, and this is Lucie in the evening and Lucie in the morning struggling to get out of the bed. So the question always is, will our plans survive real life? So how do we answer that? Because life happens, and what influences our fast thinking? So let's dive a bit into behaviorism. Uh, so uh, behavior doesn't happen out of blue. None of the behavior ever happens out of blue. There's always some kind of antecedent. That is what happens before the behavior, and that influences the behavior in that particular moment. And then we have the behavior, whatever that behavior might be. And then we have consequences. Did the situation for that person who was engaging in that behavior got better or worse? So let's dive a bit into the antecedents. So they have significant impact on our behavior in that moment. There are two main factors there. I removed the behavioral terminology, but if you want the nerdy part, we do not call it like motivation by itself. It's like motivating operations, and it has a lot of research behind it. So if you want, you can dive deeper into that topic. But basically, this describes if I want to do it, right? In the morning, lying in a bed, tired. Do I really want to get up and do yoga? And there are also environmental cues that our behavior is following. Can I have it? Because I definitely can want something, but sometimes I just cannot have it, right? I might have the biggest craving for coffee, but if I don't have coffee at home and all of the coffee shops are closed, yeah, the behavior is not going to happen. And yeah, so that's basically antecedents. And antecedents play kind of interesting role in forming our behavior because they are most of the time in the environment. All of the environmental cues are in the environment. And I do have two examples in here. And the first one is Thorndike et al. In 2012, they did a research where they changed position of water, like stations, and it changed the behavior itself. So in here, you can see that before, this is like the baseline, the water in this experiment was only available in these two places. What they did in the experimental situation was that they made more stations to contain water, bottled water. So the water was available in here, here, also here, and they then added like a basket with bottled water. And this tiny change, kind of tiny, because these were already like fridges with some beverages in them, but those were like sodas. This changed the sales of waters in that cafeteria by 25%. They didn't run any sort of like advertisement. They just changed the environment. So the thing is, when we are like changing or thinking about changing behavior, we can think, okay, how can I change the environment so the behavior is has more probability of happening, right? So if we are thinking about some habits, this also ties to like a habit change, because it follows the same principles. So if you want to drink more water, you can just have water bottles in your home on different places, and you might unknowingly drink more water without too much effort. And basically, this is what a lot of UX work is, designing environment so that some kind of behavior or some kind of desired behavior is evoked. Another example is from 2014, and yeah, they just changed position of the healthy options in a store, and it raised the sales of those items. So they defined the healthy options as dried fruits and dried fish, which is kind of influenced by that it was not sure which country was it, but probably some like Nordic country. However, if you look at these graphs, you can see that here is the baseline sale of that of dried fruits, and here is baseline sale of dried fish. And then they put the dried fruits and dried fish close to the checkout. And the sales raised just by changing the position. And when they reversed it back to the baseline, basically, in the follow-up, the level of sales dropped back to the baseline. So they basically demonstrated that it has impact on the sales. So this is something called like instructional control on like how you manipulate environment and how it influences your behavior. You can definitely see these in real life, right? When you go to the store, a lot of like sweet treats and snacks, like a chocolate bars, are right next to the checkout, because you stand there often with your kids and you're waiting, and it's really probable that you will put it in your basket and buy it. And if you think about it, a lot of stores are designed in this way. The same goes with the position of certain products, right? The products that the market, like the supermarket, wants to sell the most, they are in a eye level. Different part is with the kids. If it's like a kids thing, it is on their eye level. So yeah, a lot of these manipulations. But I'm not saying that manipulations in like a pejorative way. It's basically you're manipulating the environment and the behavior follows. So that was antecedent. If we go to the consequences, those have a significant impact on our behavior in the long run. So one of the things I'm going to mention here is reinforcement, which increases the probability of that behavior happening again in the future. So antecedents are in the moment, reinforcement is in the future, in the long run. So how do we reinforce, or how are we reinforced, how our behavior is reinforced, and how do we reinforce our users during testing, during interviews? How do we talk to them, right? So if we ask a user, like, or participant, like how do you perceive something, or how difficult on a scale 1 to 7 was this task to complete? And if they say like, yeah, 7, it was kind of easy, and the researcher reacts in a way like, amazing, yeah, that's amazing that you are sharing that. I'm like reinforcing that response, that socially desirable response. So we need to be aware of how are we working with reinforcement during research interviews. What are we reinforcing and what are we like ignoring, putting on extinction? So this kind of sums up reinforcement. You have a friend, and that friend is telling you some stupid jokes, and you laugh, right? Social desirability. Next thing you know, the same friend is telling you more and more jokes. That's basically what reinforcement means. It increases the probability of that behavior happening in the future. This works on all of us. We all have some kind of reinforcement we react to. We just sometimes don't really analyze it that well. Right? For example, if you have a headache and you take ibuprofen, the headache disappears. And next time you are in a similar situation, what you're gonna do? You're gonna repeat that behavior. So basically, if something works for us, we tend to repeat it. And sometimes people say like some behavior gets repeated without the reinforcement. There must be always some kind of reinforcement that is maintaining that behavior. Sometimes it is not obvious. Sometimes you need to dig deeper, but that's the case. And another thing is immediate versus delayed reinforcement. So if I go back to the healthy and unhealthy habits, so eating unhealthy has immediate reinforcement of like having food that you really like high sugar foods or like high fat foods, and it has immediate benefit, and that is the immediate reinforcement. And like eating like this in the long run will lead to some form of like punishment that is in a form of like not being healthy, not being able to, I don't know, do the stuff you want to do or whatever. But in a moment, the immediate reinforcement is more important to you than the delayed punishment. And it is the opposite for the healthy habits, right? The immediate reinforcement isn't there that much if you don't enjoy really healthy food. And the delayed isn't the reinforcement, but it's the punishment. You will not have as many health problems. And this applies to user research as well. Because if you have participant in an interview and you ask him a question and he answers in a way that is socially acceptable, he delays like the punishment in a way that the punishment in this scenario is like telling somebody that you don't like their prototype and needing to deal with their reaction, right? We might be afraid of reaction of that designer if we tell them like, yeah, your design isn't really good and I'm not going to use it. And the reinforcement from that is like if we think about it, the the uh, the benefit from having better functionality is delayed. It's uncertain, right? It is not just immediate or delayed, it is certain and uncertain as well. And it also applies to all of our behavior. Okay, now let's talk about behavior versus verbal behavior. So when we analyze behavior and behavior analysis, we always use this, and it stands for what is the function. So what function does this behavior serve? What reinforcement am I getting from that behavior? And um, sorry about that. I somehow lost one slide. All right. My bad. Okay. So basically, behavior by itself is the thing that you imagine if I say like behavioral data or like behavioral observation. And verbal behavior is basically communication. But in behavior analysis, we tend to name it a weird way and try to act like we are the biggest scientists. And yeah, even Skinner actually wrote a book about verbal behavior and where he like dived deeper into the topic of verbal behavior. And yeah, Skinner is the guy who trained pigeons to play ping pong and navigate missiles. So yeah, so he was doing a lot of things. And if you look at behavior versus verbal behavior, basically saying the yellow Walkman is better is the verbal behavior, and it is maintained by social reinforcement. That's the important part, right? So in that moment when you're talking to somebody, the reinforcement is in the moment, in the conversation. How the interviewer reacts, how the researcher reacts. And yeah, all of the antecedents are present in that moment. And that's that's the Lucy in the evening who is like planning that. But the verbal behavior is maintained by social reinforcement. And choosing the black Walkman is basic behavior, where the reinforcement is the black Walkman itself. Do you see the distinction here? So the solution is easy. Let's just observe the behavior, right? Well, that's not so easy oftentimes. There was this study, and it was published in British Medical Journal, which is very well received medical journal. It has like really high impact factor. And yeah, and what they did was they published a study about parachute use to prevent death and major trauma when jumping from aircraft. They did randomized controlled trial. So basically what they did was they had participants in two groups. One group got a backpack with a parachute, and the other one got a backpack without parachute. And they observed their behavior and the consequences. And they came up with really interesting finding that parachute doesn't increase the probability that you will not die. The probability of dying was the same with using the parachute and with using the empty backpack. On the methodological part, it was like really well controlled randomized trial. The catch was in this. The plane was on the ground. This was published in medical journal. Just to be clear, it was published in their like Christmas special. They do this every year, and I highly recommend reading those articles because, yeah, you can find a lot of fun things in there. Like in the last one, there was an article about like how AI can or cannot do well in tests of like cognitive impairment. Those are the tests that are used for people with dementia. So that was kind of interesting. But the thing and the point I'm making here is this might sound absurd, like it's like fun thing to do. But sometimes when we are designing experiment, we might miss a tiny detail that will influence the behavior of those participants, that will influence the result of that testing. So when you're designing scenarios for your usability testing, think about like, how are those scenarios influencing the end result, and what might be influencing the insights we get from that testing. It might not be as obvious as this, but to some people, they actually cited this article without realizing that that's the case. And yeah, it also shows like how important it is to pick participants in groups that matter. Because if they would pick a group of participants that were on a plane that was high in the sky, the results would be probably different. So that was the catch. And another catch is that not everything is observable behavior. Imagine the chaos if our thoughts would be observable, right? That wouldn't be very good. At least I think so. Yeah. So there is still a lot of value in asking people what they think, asking people what they want, having them describe their experience. Yeah, I do have Skinner here. Somehow he travels. So he also did distinguish between the private events and the observable events, like observable behavior. If I knock in here, it's observable. Everybody can see it. Everybody can say that I knocked on this table. But there is also events that are not observable. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, and all of those play a role. And only way how to see or how to like understand the emotions better is through asking the person. But then we face the risk of that person not being really honest. So yeah, we also do have some like imagining techniques in like neuropsychology where you can like study it, but it doesn't have the quality of that person telling you, because those things are in us. So there is still like some use, like a lot of use in verbal behavior, even though there is this different context than the behavior itself. So without the observable behavior, we would be missing important context. So if you ever read the thing like, okay, just observe the behavior and ignore anything that isn't observable, that's not very useful. So we would be missing out on the context. So what do we do with this? Observe behavior, but that's in a situation where we can observe the behavior and when we can test, right? But when you're testing, think about like, okay, what are the antecedents for this behavior? How did I set up the environment? Did I set up the environment for the participant to behave a certain way, right? Because if we can design experiments that compare two different functionalities, one old one and one new one, and we can manipulate the scenarios in a way that the second one, the new one, will look better in the results. It depends on the design. So we need to be mindful of that. What are the antecedents? How am I defining the scenarios? How am I nudging the participant? Am I acknowledging some things without me knowing? So it is very useful if you go back to some of your recordings of your research and you just observe your behavior, right? What am I doing in this situation? Am I agreeing or supporting that statement too much? Or if it's a statement that doesn't really fit my narrative, am I just like ignoring it? Because the behavior goes where the reinforcement flows, basically. So if I'm reinforcing something during interview, I might be like pushing the participant in a different way that I don't want. Another thing is ask about the past, not the future, right? Because people are not most of the time lying to us. They might be just positive about their future, right? We are not buying gym memberships knowing that we're never gonna go into the gym. We believe and we are positive that this time I will go more than once. So yeah, and if I wanna check that with the participant, I would ask them like, how many times have you been to gym in the last year or in the last month? If I would want to go back to my crazy morning routine when waking up at 5 a.m. and doing yoga, I would ask myself, like, what does your routine looks like right now? So it might give me the gap, like how big the gap between what I do now and what I'm saying I will do. It will give me the perspective, like how big that gap is. Because if you look at the science of habit change, often the examples in here are like, if you want to change your habits, start small, right? Because that often works. And it is backed by science as well. And the thing is, if the participant is saying they're going to do this big thing, I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just saying they're human. Another thing is triangulating the data. So can I have data from various sources? I can ask that person, cool, I can observe some behavior. Do I have behavioral data from my product? If not, how can I supplement that? Can I ask in a different way, from a different perspective? Or ask like person in a different role than the participant is. So yeah, I can play with that. There's no cookie cutter approach. There's no one size fits all. It's always looking critically at your research, at your data, and analyzing it in a way and thinking like, okay, is there something I might be missing? And one of the biggest parts is, as with every bias, be aware of the limitations, right? This is not something to be like solved. Like we cannot treat that in people. Like we can be aware of that. We can take that limitation and count with that, and just be mindful what decisions are made on what kind of data. Is that one person wishful thinking, or is it backed up by other data as well? And be mindful how you reinforce your participants during interviews and after interviews, because sometimes you might get a group of people that will go to your interviews or your testings or your research sessions, whatever format you're having, and they will go there just to get the reward. So it is good to reward your participants, but be mindful of how it is impacting your users' behavior. And if I go back to the metaphor of New Year's resolution, I can critically evaluate my research and ask where in my data are the New Year's resolutions hidden? And the question is, am I okay with that? Because every research must be put in a context of the business that we are working in, right? Is it something that I'm okay with if I'm not like 100% sure? Or is it something that needs like a controlled clinical study because I'm in healthcare? So yeah, identify if there's some New Year's resolution hidden in your data. And when you are on your interview, you can ask yourself a question. You don't have to use this name, certainly don't. But you can ask yourself a question: which Lucie am I talking to right now? Is this participant the Lucie in the evening, or is this participant the Lucie in the morning? Describing how she feels in that moment, or how she felt last time she was trying to wake up at 5 a.m. So yeah, just bring in the perspective during the interview, because sometimes people are telling us some things that we agree with and it sounds cool, but we need to have this kind of like a red flag being raised during that to make sure that we are getting relevant data. And my last question is, in your own research, where do you trust what users say too much? And another thing is, you can be totally okay with that if that's what the situation calls for. Okay, so that was it. I'm really curious about the discussion. We can discuss more in detail. So thank you for your attention. If you need any kind of like book recommendations from different perspective on this topic, I'm happy to give you some. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.